With a yank of my powers, I managed to fling a few cans of pop across the room from the kitchen counter. They smacked into the skulls of a few of the guys, hard enough for the thin metal to burst, showering them with sticky soda as well. Jet got off a few more shots, but he had to be careful not to hit his friend. One bullet lodged in a guy's shoulder, another in one's ass. Then, 3 of them threw themselves at Jet, smashing the pistol from his hand and tackling him to the ground, too. Right at that moment, Ruin walked in through the open door, laden with enough takeout to feed an army. Unfortunately, he hadn't brought an army with him.
What's all the racket? Did you start a party with that?
To give him credit, he didn't stop to gape at the chaos he found himself staring at. He dropped the bags and launched himself right into the fray in mid-sentence. For a minute, it seemed like Ruin's arrival might turn the tide in our favor. He walloped one guy and then another, tossing one off Nox and toppling one who was about to shoot Jet in the forehead. His emotional impact bounced through the crowd, the skeleton masked opponents flying into sudden rages at their colleagues and then faltering when he'd punched too many other jerkwads. The chaos in the room took on an air of confusion. Nox managed to heave himself back to his feet. Jet slapped his hand onto one of his opponent's faces and proved that he could alter shape as well as color. The guy's nose bulged beneath his mask, so big it obscured his vision. Jet snickered and socked him in the nose hard enough to send a spurt of blood from the nostrils. One of the Skeleton Corps dickheads must have decided I'd make a good hostage by virtue of being female, and maybe being naked had something to do with it too, because he lunged at me instead of the guys. I yanked up one of the pop cans and brained him across the head with it as hard as I could. He reeled to the side, and Jet recovered his gun soon enough to shoot the jackass in the heart. But then 5 more masked men barreled into the room, and suddenly we were doubly outnumbered again, even with the many enemies who'd fallen. Nox whipped out his fists again. Jet pulled the trigger on his pistol, and it only let out a hollow clicking that spoke of an empty chamber. Ruin rammed into 2 of the newcomers, only to be tripped by a third, so he sprawled flat on his face. As some of the men closed in around Jet and Nox, 2 fell on Ruin, one jabbing down with a knife. No! I lashed out with my power before I totally thought through what I was doing. I had to stop him. I had to stop him fast, or Ruin would die. With that certainty, all of my attention condensed on the pumping of blood through the man's veins, clenching it with an iron fist of supernatural energy. The man stiffened and shuddered, his arm veering wide. I felt down to the core of my own being the way his heart strained and the rest of his body protested at the sudden obstruction. My own heart thudded on in a rhythm suited for a funeral procession. I could ensure this man's imminent funeral right now. All I had to do was burst apart his heart like Kai had suggested. A trickle of nausea wrapped around my stomach. I didn't want to be a killer, but if I didn't do this thing, then the asswipe would just go back to killing Ruin for the second time. If I was in this thing, if I was going to stand with my men, I had to go all in.